Hello, Lisa here. Welcome back to my channel and welcome to anti-haul number 4. So we're gonna work through my list of decks that I regret purchasing. We're gonna talk about decks that I didn't buy, decks that I'm not going to buy or currently don't plan to buy, Kickstarters I didn't back, and all kinds of things like that. I've also added one new category to this video format, and I'm really excited. It's been ages since I've done my last anti-haul, and I'm really excited to be bringing this one to you guys. I do have, as per usual, my laundry basket of decks that I'm going to be pulling from to talk about decks in my own collection that I reach for instead of these decks that I decided not to purchase or decks that I've decided to rehome. A little disclaimer as we get started, as always, I respect the heck out of anyone who creates something and puts it out into the world. So please know that art is one of those things that is extremely subjective. Most of the time when I don't resonate with the deck, it has to do with the artwork. Something about it is too similar to something I have, or for whatever reason me and that deck aren't clicking, but I firmly respect and adore all creators, and I really appreciate what they put out into the world. So let's make sure to keep it positive in the comments. You guys always do such a great job of that, and I thank you so much. I like to really remember that there are hearts. These people have put their heart and soul into creation, and I want to make sure that it doesn't become like a slam fest. That's not what this is about. So yeah, thank you so much for always being so sweet about that and honoring that in this space. It just means a lot to me. So let's dive in with the first category being decks that I regret purchasing. The first deck I want to talk about is the Earthly Souls and Spirits deck. The Earthly Souls and Spirits deck is a beautiful deck by Terry Foss and her daughter. It was a collaborative project. I believe her daughter's photography is featured on the backs with the moon phases, and the fronts are Terry Foss's beautiful paintings. This artwork is absolutely breathtaking and absolutely stunning, and I was so excited to bring it into my collection. If I remember, I will link one of my videos talking about this deck up in the cards. I had a very positive response to the artwork. I found that when it came to reading with the deck, it just fell flat for me. There's lots to read intuitively, and I've had like legitimate conversations with friends who've had very different opinions on this, but there was just something about the artwork and the keyword combination that wasn't working for me personally. So I did end up rehoming that deck. I'm very glad I did. It went to a really good home, and that version of the deck is no longer available. You can still get the deck, but it is through, I think, Make Playing Cards. So it's going to be Make Playing Cards quality and sizing and all that kind of stuff. I don't have all the details on that, but it is currently still available. You can definitely get it. But the deck that I reach for instead when I want that really like sort of Halloween-y, witchy, sort of fall season type vibe is my Halloween Oracle. I try to make sure. There we go. Okay. So this deck, mine is trimmed. This is a Blue Angel publication, so it had bigger borders on the outside of the cards. I love the backs, by the way. Sorry for the reflection. I love the backs. Now, I edged my deck in oranges and blacks, which is a really fun take. This is, again, the Halloween Oracle, and I believe this is by Stacy DeMarco. I don't have the guidebook here, so I can't confirm, but this is just a really delightfully sort of Halloween feel deck, and I love the artwork. I find this actually to read well at any time of year. The messages are really great jumping off points for intuitive work, and I think it, like, look at this. I mean, again, it's a very different vibe. There's something very mysterious and otherworldly about Terry Foss's artwork that isn't in this deck. This is a very different art style, more photo collage and digital art, I believe. But I really enjoy this deck, and it works for me, which is, I guess, what it always comes down to. I have a few decks that I have to keep, not necessarily to work with, and I actually plan or hope to at some point make a video about decks that are in my collection that I've never worked with at all. If you're interested in that and want me to make that video, leave me a comment down below and let me know. That's something that I think I have kind of as a loose idea, but I'm not sure if it's something you guys want to see. Where was I going with this? Oh yes, that decks need to read well for me in practical application for me to want to keep them long term. So this one is really, really great, and it scratches that itch for me completely. So the next deck that I want to talk about that I regret purchasing is the Modern Tarot Reader. So the Modern Tarot Reader is this deck. Now it's by Claire Goodchild. This was the UK version of the mass market republication of the Antique Anatomy Tarot. My copy is completely unused. I may have shuffled it just to see how the cardstock shuffled. It comes with a really nice full color guidebook that's really, really beautiful. Again, I haven't spent any time with this. I've just realized that it is not for me. Although I say that now, and as I look at this, I'm like, maybe I'm being too hasty. Okay, well, here's the thing. The cardstock on this deck is so abysmally thin. Now, I don't always mind a thin cardstock. I like cardstock to feel good and to shuffle well, but this literally feels like you could have printed it out on your home printer. Like, it feels, it's not as thin as printer paper, but it's like when I say thin, like, I mean, it doesn't feel like it has a core. Like, you know, you can have a really thin cardstock. Yeah, this has been shuffled. Okay, so this is how thick it is. It's even just holding it, like, look, you can see how the cards, like, I don't know what it is, but I can't with this. But when you shuffle it, it slaps. It does bridge fine. So I have shuffled it. I'm gonna try to shuffle it on camera to see if I can. It goes, but it like clumps. It's just a thin card deck like this that shuffles really nicely, or that seems to hold its shape really nicely. I'm totally for. Anyway, let me show you the actual cards. That's what we're here for, right? It's just got these really fun sort of bones, witchy kind of vibe. I really dig it. It's beautiful. But there's something about aesthetically, like, or not aesthetically, the sensory experience of working with these cards, just, it's very unsatisfying, and I regret purchasing it. And I'm either going to be rehoming this deck in a trade, or I'm going to put it in an upcoming giveaway. So keep an eye out on my channel. When I do giveaways these days, I may not put giveaway in the title, so keep an eye on the channel. I do have one that I'm planning to come soon, and this is one of the things I'm considering putting in it as one of the prizes. So if this is something you're interested in, keep an eye out. It's a beautiful deck, and as a pip deck, it's really lovely. The book is really lovely. This is a nice sturdy box. It's not one I'm inspired to work with, so out it goes. But in its place, a pip deck that I'm really, really excited about and definitely inspired to play with is the La Corte de Tarocchi. I'm really bad with reading that kind of stuff. This is an Il Meneghello deck. I think this is currently out of print. I do believe it's been reprinted a couple of times, but I think it might be out of print at the moment. Somebody feel free to correct me in the comments down below. It's this really cool size and shape, and it's a pip deck, but not in the, like, it doesn't have the Marseille arrangement of the pips. And these characters are just, they're really expressive. It feels really ancient, even though it's of course not. This is a modern tarot deck that was made to sort of mimic the style of older tarot decks, but it doesn't necessarily even have the Marseille arrangement of the minors, of the pips. But it's just, it's so beautiful, and I have just enjoyed pulling this out and like shuffling it. There's something about it. And when I shuffle this, I only overhand it and I go like this way. And it's very, I don't know if you can hear the sound. It's like this really thick hand cut. There's something about it that is such a sensory experience in a positive way, that when I have things like this, the idea of keeping things that don't make me feel excited to play with them just is less appealing. You know what I'm saying? I hope you know what I'm saying. So this is the La Corte de Tarocchi, really, really beautiful Il Meneghello deck. Again, I think it's been reprinted a couple of times, so keep an eye out on sites like Tarot BG, which is where I got my copy from. I checked it right before doing this video, and it did say out of stock currently. I don't know. If you know, let us know down below. Moving right along, the third deck that I regret purchasing is the 78 Tarot Elemental. Now, I have to be super clear. This is a stunning deck, and I'm about to show you just how stunning it is. It's gorgeous. And I love, love, love what 78 Tarot does. I love that. It's funny because I had seen 78 tarot decks coming out year after year, and I hadn't jumped on any of them until Tarot Mythical. 78 Tarot Mythical came out, which is why, just spoiler alert, this is the deck in my own collection that I love instead. So 78 Tarot Mythical, which was last year's 78 Tarot collaboration, and 78 Tarot Elemental. The 78 Tarot project is essentially a deck project where you have a full deck of 78 cards made up of 78 different artists at least. In fact, I think there's typically 79 different artists. And what's really cool is that in the bottom of each box is all the signatures of all the different artists. The production quality on these decks is outstanding. They really, this team, Katie Welsh, Trisha, Trish Sullivan, I'll keep wanting to call her Trisha, but Trish Sullivan, Katie Welsh, they do an amazing job of putting this deck together. The 78 Tarot Elemental is fully gilded, really beautiful, high quality gildings, they really stand up, and then the backs are also fully gilded. Like, this is a gorgeous deck, and the artwork is out of this world. There's an extra meditation card, and this is an extra chakra healer card. There's an extra spirit, oh, I think there's one for each element? No, it's just spirit. There's an extra spirit card. The artist name is on every single card, which is really great. It's a great way to discover new artists. Now, I'm not going to keep going through the art on this because there are flip throughs available online, and I'm trying to keep this deck in pristine condition because this for sure I'm going to be putting up for offer. I shouldn't say for sure, but like 90% sure I'm going to be putting this in an upcoming giveaway on the channel. But it is absolutely stunning and beautiful. The guidebook, you guys, is really, really well done. Full color images, full page, and wonderful writing. I have, like, again, I'm trying to keep this one as pristine as possible because when I got it in my hands, I realized that I just love my 78 Tarot Mythical so much more. And it's no one's fault. It's just that I'm not a collaborative art deck person generally. I don't typically like collaborative art decks. They often don't feel very cohesive to me. I think that for me, 78 Tarot Mythical was kind of my unicorn of collaborative decks. There was something about this particular theme. It's got a mythic theme. So you see a lot of like Greek myth represented, a lot of fantastical creatures. Here's what the backings of 78 Tarot Mythical looks like. Here's the sides and here's the front. So now there's also a 78 Tarot Nautical, which I think was one of their first. They've got 78 Tarot, just the original, the Nautical, Carnival, then Mythical, and then Elemental. I might be forgetting one, but I think that's what they have. So this one, something about this particular combination of artists and the way these cards were depicted, it scratches so many itches for me. There's one or two cards in this whole deck that are not necessarily my favorite style of art, but for the most part, I just really gelled with this one. It feels cohesive, and I don't know, I think a lot of that actually might have to do with the theme. The fact that each one of these creatures, look at Katie Welsh's art. Her art is so delightful. I mean, there's some really fantastic cards in here. And again, I think it was the theme that ultimately is what helped me to fall in love with this deck. I absolutely adore it. But because I love it, when I didn't love 78 Elemental just as much, when it didn't have the same thing to grab me as this one did, I was like, I'm never gonna reach for it over my 78 Mythical. When I wanna work with the 78, I'm gonna work with this one. That being said, if you are somebody who likes to collect tarot, then even if you don't gel with these decks as reading decks or as working decks, having 78 pieces of art per deck with 78 to 79 different artists per deck in your collection, if you just like to pull out your decks and look at the artwork, these are one of the funnest things you can do. And my copy is signed because I met the team at Newt's last year. There's something really, really special about this, and I love this, but because this one is so special, I think I don't get on with the other one. So that is it for decks I regret purchasing. Our next category is decks that are currently available on the mass market that I don't have any intention of purchasing. And I really need to tell you guys, confession time, okay? When it comes to this portion of the anti-haul, when it's talking about stuff I'm not gonna buy, I've totally changed my mind in the past. If you watch my anti-hauls 1, 2, and 3, I have a playlist for anti-hauls. I'll link the playlist up in the cards. If you watch my other anti-hauls, you will definitely catch me up in a couple of changed my mind moments if you watch my channel regularly, because there's a few for sure I've gone back and bought, and there's actually 1 or 2 I've anti-hauled in the past that still kind of linger in and off my wish list. One example of that is Stephen Bright's Spirit Within Tarot, which is still on my radar. I can't quite shake it. So if that happens, just know I am a person of changing tastes. So sometimes I'll anti-haul it this month, and next month I'll be like, I need that in my life. And just like the other way happens, sometimes I'm convinced I want something, and then I get it, and something about it and me don't get along. So just know that that's a thing. So there's your other disclaimer. I always reserve the right to change my mind. This one I think I'm very unlikely to change my mind about, and that is the Starman Tarot. The Starman Tarot is, I believe, the tarot themed after David Bowie. Somebody's going to be like, of course it's themed after David Bowie. How could you forget that? But I wasn't a big David Bowie fan. I just never got into David Bowie in any kind of way. So that theme doesn't grab me, and there's something about the artistic style of this deck that feels like my eyeballs are kind of being attacked. I think it's beautiful art, but the idea of laying out even more than one card in front of me with this art style is overwhelming for me to even think about. So that's a thing. And I find it just a little bit too busy and a little bit too bright. What's funny is that I actually don't dislike busy decks. One example of a deck that I love in my collection currently that I reach for when I want that busier energy, and this is easily one of my favorite decks of all time, is the Bonefire Tarot. This deck, oh my gosh, I'm suddenly forgetting her name. I can picture it in my head. Anyway, somebody will correct me down below, or I'll pop it up on the screen or something. The Bonefire Tarot is actually one of my favorites when I'm doing relationship readings, because I love the chaos, because relationships are messy and they're chaotic. And I just really love all the different things that my intuition can grab onto in these cards. I find them very emotive. I find all this chaos to be really helpful when I'm reading about intense situations. This is the only deck I typically reach for if a client asks me a question about a tumultuous relationship. This is one of my go-tos, because especially relationships that are on again, off again, that sort of thing, because this one just really is fantastic for digging into situations where we have a lot of passion and a lot of energy. This is a very fiery deck, for sure, which makes sense because of its name, the Bonefire Tarot, right? You with me on this? Yes. So I love this one, and this one, it works for me, but the Starman Tarot, not so much. Another deck that I don't see myself ever purchasing, but I mean, things could change, right? Is the original Thoth Tarot, illustrated by Lady Frida Harris. The Aleister Crowley Thoth is a classic. It's just not one, so I'm just checking my notes. It's just not one that I see myself ever purchasing. Every time I think of the idea of either studying Thoth or getting more comfortable with Thoth, I look at the artwork on that deck and I just hard nope right out of that idea. Literally last month, because I have plans to study Thoth this year, I was like, you know, I really should get the original Thoth, and I still might, just to have one to look at or reference. But the idea of working with it, no. And the Devil card, I just can't. Once somebody pointed out to me the visual that that card seems to represent, I can't. I just can't. It's not for me. But the deck in my own collection, and this won't come as a surprise if you've been watching for a bit, that I'm going to be diving into is the Tabula Mundi. I bought this deck last year, knowing that at some point I was going to want to study Thoth, and this is the one that I'm really attracted to, and so this is the one that I chose to pick up. It's got a really, really busy but profoundly meaningful and beautiful back. It's one of those things where I look at it and I'm like, if I was just like looking at this back for what attracts me, like artistically or visually, this would not be it. That said, it does have some really cool holographic like foiling elements that are really stunning when you catch them in the light. But the artwork on this deck feels modern, but it also feels like it's very true to Thoth. And I know I shouldn't even say that because I have no idea what I'm talking about because I haven't even studied Thoth, but it feels like it has that sort of magical spiritual energy that I get when I look at Thoth, but it just feels more my speed. I really like the way that this looks. I have no idea. I love this Ace of Wands so much. Root of the Powers of Fire. So powerful. I love this. I have no idea if I'm going to get on with Thoth or not, but this is an independent deck, and I believe currently it's still available, but it won't be necessarily available forever because, again, it's an independent deck. It was quite pricey. I did get Book M to go along with it, but the quality of the cards, the quality of the box, like look at this beautiful big wide ribbon. Even the little booklet that comes in the deck itself, even if you don't get the extra book, it's like tied with a ribbon, and it looks like it's hand bound with that ribbon. The quality here is just, it's bar none. Like you can't, it's just absolutely stunning. This is the Colorus Arcanus edition. So this is the color edition. There is a black and white edition, I believe, of this deck, but I don't know if that's still available or not. I'm just noticing this Queen of Cups and just loving her. So beautiful. Anyway, I can't wait to dive into this deck. Em Meline, the creator of this deck, is one of the two co-hosts of the Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast, which is also on my list to dive into this year. And they break down Thoth and Rider-Waite-Smith. T. Susan Chang is the other co-host of that show. of that podcast, they break down the Rider-Waite-Smith and the Thoth. They refer to the original Lady Frida Harris version of the Thoth cards, but I want to work with that podcast with this deck. That was always my plan. That was my plan when I picked this up, and it came onto my radar because of Fortune's Wheelhouse podcast. I listened to the first 2 episodes and I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. So that's my plan with that. Okay, next up in decks that I do not plan to purchase, and I'm pretty sure I won't change my mind on this one. It went on and off my wish list a ton for a couple of years, and it's ultimately ended up off, and that is the Good Tarot. That is by Colette Baron-Reid and illustrated by Jenna De La Grataglia, I believe. So the Good Tarot is aesthetically so beautiful, and every time I see it in person and I flip through the cards, I'm like, oh, this is so pretty. I love the way it looks. I love the dreamy quality to the art, excuse me, to the artwork. What stops me every time is the minor arcana feels disconnected for me. It doesn't feel rich. It doesn't feel like the meanings are depicted visually in a way that I personally resonate with. So for me, it was a no-go. And I don't think that's going to change again. Every time I look at it, I'm like, it's real pretty, but I don't see myself working with it. Again, if it's something that you feel like you could work with, then all power to you because it looks gorgeous. But I just know it's not my style. That said, one of the things about the Good Tarot that I think attracts a lot of people is the idea that it's taking this sort of positive approach to the tarot, makes it maybe a little bit less scary and a little bit less intimidating. And I do have a deck, actually 2 I'm going to mention in this category, in my collection that really fit that bill for me personally. The first of these, and the main one I'm going to choose out of my current collection that scratches that itch, is the Happy Tarot. So my copy is trimmed and edged in all these beautiful purples, and it's borderless because I trimmed it. I believe if you pick this up now, it is a mass market deck, that your copy will be borderless. I believe that's how this one comes now. But this one, even though it has all the balance of the Rider-Waite-Smith, all the like cards that are shadowy are still shadowy in this deck. You know, you see like maybe a child playing, but you might also see a child crying, and you might see, you know, so it's got all of that energy is in here. However, what's neat about this is that the guidebook has little affirmations throughout it. So for every single card, there's a little bit of advice about how you can find happiness based on the energy of that card. And it's kind of a cool, positive little twist on the tarot, and I really appreciate that. So if you want like a hug deck or you want something cute, this one is one of the cute or hug positive spin kind of decks that I can reach for if I am not in like a space mentally or emotionally where I'm prepared to get my butt handed to me by my deck of cards. So this is a good one for that. The other one I want to mention for this that is probably even more of that sort of gentle, nurturing, loving energy and less of the smack you in the face with the truth kind of energy is the Guardian Angel Tarot by Radleigh Valentine. I keep this one in this pretty feather bag. This is probably my favorite deck mod I've ever done, and I was inspired by Don Michelle over at Boho Tarot. But Radleigh Valentine had originally collaborated on this deck with Doreen Virtue. Her name is now off of the deck. That's the version that I purchased, so no royalties or anything like that go back to her, which was important to me because she's not all about this life anymore, so she doesn't need to get the money for it anymore. Was that harsh? Possibly. Anyway, so this is the guidebook. It's actually really, really lovely. This deck does come gilded and larger. I followed Don Michelle's guidelines for how she did this, and I measured and I just cut all the gilding off, and I re-edged it in these gorgeous pastel colors that match the fronts. This is probably my favorite hug deck of all time, tarot, oracle combined, like my very favorite. I am not into angel work necessarily, but I really enjoy the vintage feel of these decks. I really love that they feel like they're like a deck your grandma would have or something. Like, it just feels very nurturing. The messages are really sweet, and it's a very low mental emotional effort deck. So it's my go-to for self-care because I don't need to sit over the cards and consider what the message for me might be. I can just read the message, and I love that about this deck. It just makes it the most comforting deck. It's like pulling out a really comfy blanket and wrapping yourself up in it. I have to fix that. Okay, there we go. It's like wrapping yourself up in something really, really comfortable and warm and cozy and cuddly because there's no energy required from you when you're working with these. And I know that may be exactly the opposite of what you want, but there's something about these that I just absolutely love. So if I just need that like warm hand on my shoulder, that gentle hug kind of energy, the Guardian Angel Tarot works for me. This is the backs look like. I don't know if I showed them, but it's really beautiful. And for like probably a good 3 or 4 months, I had this deck and it lived right by my bedside, and I would just read a card right before bed. I'd shuffle, draw, and read my message. And I usually will also read the message that accompanies that card in the guidebook, because it usually goes even a little further. And what's neat is that for the court cards, it has situations. You read it as if it's a situation, and then it's got people. So it will describe the type of person that is. And then there's an additional meaning section. And there's more. So I'm hoping this one actually comes up in my new Tarot by the Book series soon, because that'd be really fun to see how that works in sort of practical application, especially because I've only ever used this deck for myself. I've never used it in a collective reading or a client reading, but I love it. Okay, that is it for currently available mass market decks that I'm not gonna buy. So the Starman Tarot, the Thoth, and the Good Tarot are no-goes for me, at least right now. I don't think those 3 will change, but we'll see. Coming up next is currently available decks that are independent that I'm not going to buy. I've got 2 of these to mention today. The first one is called Oracle of the Wild, and I will put some pictures up here for you. This is a really colorful deck. It is vibrant, and I actually really love the keywords, but it's a little too similar to a different deck that I have in my collection, and I really adore the guidebook of the deck I have in my collection, so I'm going to show that now. But it is the Wild Messengers Alchemical Tarot. So this one also has, to me, a somewhat similar art style. It's that vivid sort of purples and blues. This one is matte. But there's a lot more white space, and the white space on these cards I feel like makes those kind of vibrant sort of repeating colors easier to look at. I really like this. I wish this deck had keywords as well, and if I actually liked my own handwriting I might add them, but I've done that to a deck before and I ended up hating the results. But really I use these cards more as a way to work with their associated guidebook than to work with them like as a standard tarot, although I kind of regret not using this deck in my year ahead spread. I think that would have been really cool to pair this with a regular tarot deck and use their combined messages throughout the year. But I really, 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 really love the the Wild Messengers Alchemical Tarot guidebook. That book, the richness of the meanings makes it such a wonderful deck for self-improvement, for personal growth, for spiritual approach to the tarot and to your life. I just think it's really, really good. So I use the cards more to figure out which guidebook, part of the guidebook I'm working with than anything else. But yeah, what was I saying it was called? The Oracle of the Wild. The Oracle of the Wild is available right now and it looks really beautiful. It's just, I feel like having that one and this one just doesn't make sense for me in my collection, but it is cool. So if you like animal decks, check it out. Coming up next is the Efflorescent Tarot, the colored version. I'm forgetting the artist's name offhand, so I will have a picture of the deck up in the screen somewhere. But the main reason that I have decided this is not one I'm going to pick up is because I love, 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 love the other deck by this creator. And I love it so much that I don't see myself reaching for the Efflorescent Tarot over this one. And this one is the Little Monsters Tarot. So I have it in this cute little black and white OG Peggy bag. This is also a fun deck mod that I did. So I actually hand cut all of these cards into their ovals. So this deck, I believe when it first came out, it was like a Kickstarter or an Indiegogo project, and the cards were ovals. So they were these really cool egg shapes, and they came in like an oval shaped box and like the whole works. Now, then the deck was available on the creator's Etsy shop, and they were like little poker or bridge size cards, and now they're available in like a larger size. So I got the larger size version and I trimmed it down. And it's not a perfect cut because, oh my gosh, trimming into ovals is actually kind of hard and scary. So I knew it was going to be a little bit off, and then I edged it in black, and some of the edging sort of bled into some of the cards, so the edging's a little bit messy. I've got like a micro edge on a lot of them, but there's something about that just kind of works anyway with this deck, and I want to look at it myself. It's got some gloss on it, but it's kind of almost like a matte gloss. If you can see, it's not like a mirrored gloss. It's a little bit more, yeah, more matte than that. It's one of only a couple black and white decks that I own, and it's got that sort of playful energy that I love, but it feels very dreamy and spiritual, and there's so much to play with, and it's so fun to me that it's oval. So yeah, as much as I like the look of the Efflorescent Tarot, then there is a black and white and a colored version of that deck, which if I remember, I will have put pictures of both. If I don't remember, then go look it up. But that is the Little Monsters Tarot is my favorite, and so I don't see myself wanting to get the Efflorescent as well. So next up in indies, oh, that was it for indie. Next category, decks that are currently in pre-order status, indie or mass market, that I'm not gonna buy, probably. So the first of these is the Dark Wood Tarot. I believe this one is by Sasha Graham. I can't remember the name of the artist. The art style on this is really, really cool, and it's kind of fun and kind of spooky, but I don't see myself picking it up. I didn't end up getting on with the Tarot of Haunted House that was also by Sasha Graham. Watch me have the artist's name completely wrong. If so, I apologize in advance, but I don't have a copy of it in front of me. The Dark Woods Tarot looks really, really cool and really sort of fun for that dark time of year, that Halloween, that sort of walking through a darkened haunted forest kind of vibe. But I just don't think I'm going to work with it. There's not a lot of like sort of darker or spookier decks that I really want to work with. So I'm very selective about decks with that kind of energy that I bring in, because I know I can be so picky, and I've kind of learned the hard way by rehoming several of those that there's most of them just aren't going to be for me. But instead, out of my current collection of things, what I would grab for instead is the lovely Ellis deck. The Ellis deck still has a bit of that almost dark energy to it. Not dark as in bad or scary, just it's got deeper tones. It's got that sort of magical world vibe to it. It's very like sort of fantasy landscape. But I freaking love this deck. I love the vectorized style of artwork. I love the symbols that are present. I love the fact that each minor suit has its own, like, almost like its own planet, its own world. I love, 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 love this deck. The backs are really cool too, hey? Anyway, I really, really enjoy this. This is one, I think that if I had gotten, and that's the other thing, is that Dark Woods Tarot seems to have a similar kind of approach to the art, in the sense that I believe it's also like a vectorized style of art, a little bit flatter, less gradient color, that sort of thing. But I love the Ellis deck so, so much, and I feel like this scratches that itch for me. So that is the Ellis deck. This one is the 5th edition. You can see that on the bottom there, and you can find this at illustrations.net, and that website's also at the bottom. This is a cool deck, and it's an independent deck that's been around a long time, but I feel like doesn't get a ton of airtime. I found out about it from Tracy at Becoming Temperance, so check out her channel for like walkthroughs and things like that. I think I also did a walkthrough on this deck. Any of the decks I'm talking about, feel free to hit the little search on my channel and check it out, because I probably have some kind of review or walkthrough on it. But that is the Ellis deck. The other deck that is currently in pre-order status, let me just take a look at my notes, that I'm not gonna buy is the Star Spinner Tarot. This one has been getting like I think actually this one is a mass market. I think this one's mass market. This one's been getting a ton of attention, and lots of people are talking about it, and I wanted so badly to like it, and I've looked at several like images and previews, and I've looked at other work by the same artist, and there's just something that's not vibing with me. I'm not even entirely sure what it is, because it almost has a bit of that cute aesthetic that's normally right up my alley. The colors are really pretty and sort of pastel. It's just, there's something about it that's not hitting for me, and I might feel differently when people get their decks in their hands and start doing walkthroughs and flip throughs, but it's just not speaking to me. The deck from my collection that does speak to me and feels like it kind of scratches that itch is the beautiful Whispering Spirits Tarot by Joanna Nelson. I did not back this deck on Kickstarter. In fact, I anti-hauled this deck and was like, I don't think I'm gonna buy it because I love my Mons Tarot so much. But this one does have a very different vibe to it. It feels freer in a way, a little bit more ethereal, a little less grounded. A little less practical. I could see myself going to this deck for more of those sort of spiritual questions rather than those sort of everyday questions, and I feel like I would get really solid answers. I have not worked with this deck yet since it's so new to my collection, but I have done a full side-by-side walkthrough that by the time this video goes up, that one will be on my channel, so I will try to remember to link it in the cards, if YouTube will let me, since it's not up yet at the time I'm filming this. But these cards are so beautiful, and they've got a lot of that same sort of cuteness, the same sort of color tones, a little bit deeper, but we get a lot of pastels, and I just feel like this one sort of scratches that itch for me. So these are the backs of the Whispering Spirits Tarot. I really like this deck, and I'm a huge fangirl of Joanna Nelson and her work. I just really love what she does. I think her energy is just amazing and bright, and I think that really comes through in the way that she paints. So this one's the one that wins out for me. And hey, this way this deck got to be on both sides of my anti-haul, because first I was not going to buy it, and then I did buy it, and now I like it, and I'm not going to buy something else. So it's kind of all rolling forward in this beautiful karmic wheel of life. Moving on to our next category, we are going to be talking about things that are... Oh, there's one more. Sorry, there's one more deck that's in pre-order status that I'm not going to buy, and that is the Grimalkin Tarot. The Grimalkin Tarot is a deck that is being produced by MJ Cullinane. MJ is the creatress of the Crow Tarot. Here's my beautiful Crow Peggy bag. This one was originally a Kickstarter deck, and then it was released as mass market. The Grimalkin Tarot is a cat-themed deck that MJ is producing now, and on the heels of her dog-themed deck, which I also backed. This one I backed on Indiegogo. I believe Grimalkin is also on Indiegogo. I will say this was not my best crowdfunding deck experience, and I will be talking about my best and worst crowdfunding, Kickstarter, Indiegogo kind of experiences in a future video. That's another one I would love to hear how much interest there is for that, because it's something I'm planning but I just haven't gotten around to yet. So if you're super keen to see a video on my best and worst Kickstarters, Indiegogos, let me know down below, I'll let you know. But based on that experience, I don't really want to crowdfund another deck from her. I'll wait until they're out and then decide if I want it. That said, I do adore her art style. This Wise Dog Tarot is so sweet. I haven't worked with it yet, but I have filmed. No, I don't think I've even filmed a flip through of this deck. Cardstock's a little bit thin. Really cute backs. I guess I'm putting them out of order, hey? I guess that's all right. I'm like, but I don't want them out of order. Anyway, so the Grimalkin Tarot, if you are a cat person more than a dog person, you might be looking for something a little bit more. I find that the dog and the cat decks that I see out in mass market often feel a little too just Rider-Waite-Smith clone with pets thrown in. And I feel like MJ does do a really good job of capturing the energy of the animal, just like she did with the Crow Tarot in each of these cards. And fun fact, these are usually, they're collage style art, and like with as well some other artistic elements. I'm not an artist, I couldn't tell you how she does it, but combined with photos, and a lot of the photos are sourced from backers of the decks, so you can back at a level that gets your pet or your cat or your dog photo in the deck. I don't think that's all of them, but I do think a lot of these were submitted that way, and that's kind of cool to know that these were real, animals with real stories. I do sometimes find the guidebook to be a little bit lacking. I say sometimes, but I find the guidebook, I should say, after having looked at it, a little bit lacking. But she does sell a separate journal that may or may not have some more info in it. So this is what an independent deck from her kind of looks like. The Crow Tarot was picked up by US Games. This is the mass market version of that same deck. So I do like her art style. I should show you some cards from the Crow Tarot in case you haven't seen it. This one, US Games production quality has been so good lately. Like, it's been just very consistent. So what the backs look like. It's a nice, thick, sturdy cardstock, probably 350 GSM, if I were to guess. I'm not the greatest at guessing, but you can see it's a very similar art style, but this one features crows, and this is a really wonderful, wonderful, wonderful deck. And I'm hoping I'm going to bond with the Wise Dog Tarot in the same way. I'm really glad that I have this. I've enjoyed working with it, and it's definitely the deck that I use for air in my elemental tarot readings when I do those for clients, so that's something. So those two are what I would reach for instead of the Grimalkin Tarot. Okay, so next up is Kickstarters I didn't back. So the first one I want to talk about is the Orion's Tarot. Now this one, it's digital animal artwork. It looks absolutely beautiful. And it reminds me a little bit of an artist I've been following whose name I suddenly don't remember. Who is going to be doing a deck at some point. It's like this really bright, vivid digital artwork. At any rate, this Orion's Tarot looks gorgeous. It was up on Kickstarter. I chose to give it a pass. I do have, as I mentioned, that Wild Messengers Alchemical Tarot that's got that kind of vivid animal artwork. But when it comes to animal decks, the Kickstarter I did back and really do enjoy is the 5 Cent Tarot. This is by, I don't want to get her name wrong, I'm going to say Madame Clara. Is that her name? Let's see. Madame Clara. This is such a cool deck. It's got a really fun vintagey vibe, 5 Cent Tarot, and it takes animal decks and it sort of twists them up a little bit in a really cool way. So it's got this fun kind of, it's got a gorgeous edging. I got mine in the green backs with the green edging, and there's some choices. You can buy this deck from her now. Is mine? Oh yeah, I've got reversals shuffled into this deck because there are upright and reversed keywords. Now this is animal energy, but it's very sort of vintage feeling, and you've got these wonderful keywords, and it's just a very different take on what we normally see as like an animal deck. And I really appreciate that about this particular set of cards. I think the cardstock is really great. It's fun to have a deck that I shuffle reversals into simply because there are reversed meanings and keywords and things present on the card, so I've got that visual cue. And yeah, this is what I'm really excited to have and to be playing with. I've used it for a few readings. It's very wonderful. It's very wonderful. I feel like that's really awkwardly said. It's wonderful for predictive readings, as one of the ways that I really like using this one. And she did send it with a bunch of bonuses. There was a bunch of bonus cards just like hanging out in the bag with it. And I believe there was a reading cloth. Yeah, I've got the reading cloth. And there was a pin, and it comes in this really, really nice, I mean, it's not a peggy bag, but it'll do, right? It comes in this nice tasseled bag that feels like it's decent quality. Oh, there's my pin. It's like hiding out in the bottom of the bag. I will say, okay, thought I had a thread coming off. Look at this cute, like, enamel pin. How funky is that? So yeah, this is a fun deck, and I'm glad I backed this one. And this is the one, animal one. This is the one animal deck I would definitely reach for over and above that Orion's Tarot. This just feels like it has more to it to excite me and sort of change up the way that I look at tarot. So that was cool. Another Kickstarter that I did not back. There's ghosts in here. No, I'm just kidding. One of my pieces of artwork just fell down randomly. The Materia Prima. Okay, so this was, was this a Kickstarter? This was a Kickstarter, yes. It's by the same people, Usi, that do the Pagan Otherworlds Tarot, and this deck looks really cool, but I didn't like their previous Oracle deck that came out. I can't remember the name of that one. A bunch of people raved about it. It was a little monochromatic. Anyway, this particular deck, the Materia Prima, is like, I get the theory behind it. It's based on like the chemical elements, if I remember correctly, or the table of correspondences or something. It's science. There's nothing about that is up my alley. I mean, I like me some science, but not in my cards. It didn't excite me. Now, I guarantee you somebody is going to end up saying something, probably Dustin at Modern Metaphysic Man is going to say something about these cards, and I'm going to be like, oh man, if I'd have realized that, I probably would have wanted them. And maybe things will change, but they don't excite me visually, and they don't excite me thematically. So right now, they're definitely on my not worried about it list. But I will say that instead, if I want something kind of minimalist, but that does excite me visually and that does kind of get the gears turning, the deck that I tend to reach for is the Inner Star Oracle by Inner Hue. Is that who this is by? No, I made that up. By the Darling Tree. Sorry, the Inner Star Oracle deck by the Darling Tree. And this is designed by Joe Klima. This is a 55 card deck. It is an independent. This is the Magic Edition. And this is more like sigil based with some really wonderful keywords. This is what the backs look like, which I just love. This sort of person here in lotus pose. But these are really minimalist and thoughtful. And so if I want something that's going to just get me thinking in that way, sort of take me outside my comfort zone a bit, this is probably about as far as I'm gonna go. I love the geometry and the sigils in this deck. I think this is a really nice quality deck. It's a really great cardstock. It feels really smooth and matte. It's lovely. So this one is the Inner Star Oracle deck, and this is what I will reach for if I find I'm getting the itch for a deck like Materia Prima. These aesthetically don't look anything like the Materia Prima. Like if you like that sort of old world feel, something really classical, this is brightly colored. It's not an aesthetic choice so much as it is if I want that simplicity, something really distilled down, this is up my alley. For an Oracle deck, anyway. So the next thing in this category for Kickstarters I didn't back, the last thing is, and this one, I was gutted about this one a little bit actually. It's the Wilder Woven deck. I believe the creator's name is Gregory White. I could be making that up. You guys, I followed this deck art creation process from the very, very beginning when he first started posting about it on his Instagram. I'm still following him on Instagram. I love his art. They're these wonderful, it's like this white space with these shapes that he paints. And then the shape has to do with the meaning of the card and like what's inside the card. And it's absolutely stunning. It's like landscapes inside of like an animal shape or inside of a droplet shape. It's really cool to look at, and it's again, stunningly beautiful. But the longer that I followed this art, the more I realized that I wasn't sure if this is something that I was just appreciating artistically or something I really wanted to work with in a tarot deck. And as it came closer to it actually coming out on Kickstarter, I realized I don't think I actually want this deck. And when it came out on Kickstarter, I was like, oh, I really don't want this deck. And it's beautiful. And I want to hold it and I want to look at it. But I know based on what I get excited to reach for out of my current collection, I just know that I would not reach for it. But what I thought about that I might like instead out of my own collection that kind of connects me to nature, which is what I feel like that deck does really beautifully. And that is, out of my own collection, that is the Tarot Fauna. Funny story, I listed this deck as a deck I regret purchasing, possibly even in my very last anti-haul or the one before that, because I tried to work with this deck for a week and I just wasn't connecting with it. And then I believe I watched a walkthrough by why am I drawing a blank? Oh my goodness. Cosmic Crow. Okay, I was on the right track. I just didn't trust myself. Cosmic Crow works with a lot of animal energy. And I watched her walking through this deck and I got her perspective and I was like, okay, there's a bunch of things that I missed that I didn't give credit to. I didn't really take this deck in when I worked with it the first time. And so I kind of took it off my trade list. I put it into maybe trade, and then I worked with it again for a week and I absolutely fell in love with this deck. I absolutely fell in love with it. I bonded with it. I got it. It got me. I feel like we connected and I was so pleased that I hadn't traded it away because it is out of print and I absolutely love it. Now it completely shifted my take on the tarot a bit, and there's something about this artwork that just really connects me with the natural world and it helps me to look at things a little bit more slowly. I think what I realized about this deck is it's not the kind of deck that you can just like, some decks you can, like for me, the classic Rider-Waite-Smith, I can just throw out a few cards and I can just go, boom. This deck, I feel like I need to sit with and I need to really take in the story in the artwork. And I really need to move carefully and slowly through the deck, if that makes any sense, and through my readings with this deck. But I really grew to love this. So when it comes to connecting me with the natural world, this deck is one of my go-tos now. Another one would be the Brady Tarot, which I've also talked about on my anti-hauls before as a favorite. And, oops, oh no. And then I thought I would add a new category. Is that it for those? Let me just make sure I didn't miss anything. Wilder Woven was the last one. Yeah. So the next category in this series is called, oh, I put that in the wrong section. Oh no, Lisa, don't put it in the wrong section. I've literally organized this laundry basket. I know. I understand that makes me a complete dork, but there you go. I have decided to talk about out of print I didn't say that right. Let me try that again. Anyway, our next category is out of print insanity. And this is the section where I talk about decks that I'm lusting after that are out of print, but that I just can't justify putting down the coin for. My unicorn deck has been for a while the Tarot of Delphi. And I'm crossing my fingers and toes and everything that one copy of this deck is going to make its way into my hands at some point. Worst case scenario or backup plan, there is definitely a reprint coming of this deck. I don't know when. I don't know if it's going to be through Kickstarter. I have no idea how it's going to happen, but a reprint is more than just a rumor at this point. So I think it will happen at some point. But other than that, I can't think of anything right now that's out of print that I feel like I have to have or would really fall over myself to have. Mons Tarot was a deck like that. It used to be that Idiosynchro deck was on this list, and it still is. If it were to ever magically get reprinted, which I don't think is going to happen, I would scoop it up, but I wouldn't pay the prices for it that people are asking. And now that I have the Ellis Tarot deck, which is the one I showed earlier, that's also like a vectorized artwork, and I've seen other decks that have like a vectorized artwork style to them that I also like, I'm like, okay, that one doesn't need to be this like ride or die kind of vectorized artwork deck. Like there's other ones out there for me. So nothing really sitting in the out of print insanity category for me right now in any kind of major way. But what else was I going to say? Oh yes, and there's a new category. So the new category is decks I'm anticipating. So this is where I'm going to throw at you a couple of decks that are currently sitting on my wish list that I'm looking forward to, that I cannot wait to have in my hands. And the first one of those is the Everyday Witch mini tarot deck coming out. This is the deck by Deborah Blake, illustrated by Elizabeth Alba. And my copy, which I keep in this really cute witchy, that's the upside down side, that's the upright side, which is on Broom's tarot bag. This is such a great deck. Mine has seen a ton of love over the last many years, and I just really enjoy this deck. So I'm excited to have a little pocket edition that I can toss in my purse or my bag. And yeah, I cannot wait to have it in my hands. So that's coming out a little bit later this year. I'm really looking forward to it. Another deck that I'm really anticipating, and I'm anticipating it and I'm hoping I'm gonna like it when it comes out, but there's so little information available about it right now that I just don't know. That is the Enchanted Unicorn Oracle deck by Priestess Moon. Priestess Moon is the creator of the Making Magic cards, and if I remember, I will link a card that links to my full walkthrough of the Making Magic cards. I've also talked about them, I believe, in my spiritual decks I use spiritually or something like that, so if I remember, I'll link one of those videos. But the Making Magic cards are just a little mini deck, and they have magical sigils with different intentions. I use them constantly in my client readings. I use them for myself. I use them to hold a particular energy. I'll tuck one into my wallet for safe travel when I'm traveling. I'll put one on my abundance altar for attracting financial positivity my way and all that kind of stuff. I love working with them. Really enjoyed it. I love unicorns. So naturally, I'm excited to see what Priestess Moon is going to put together about unicorns. So I'm looking forward to seeing what that looks like when it comes out. I'm not married to the idea of getting it if I don't like it, so I'm waiting to see more images. I don't remember when it's coming out, but soon. Sometime in 2020 anyway. And that is it for anti-haul number 4. This has been a long one. Thank you for hanging out with me. These are always really lengthy videos, but I genuinely enjoy making them. I wish I could make them more often, but they are a lot of time. There's the filming and then there's all the editing to get all the images in. So I really appreciate you guys watching these and sharing them, because they are definitely, there's a lot that goes into them, and I think you guys like them, and I've gotten lots of positive feedback so far. So remember to comment down below about what you are anti-hauling right now, things that you're not gonna buy, and maybe what you have out of your current collection that fills that need for you or scratches that itch. Because I think one of the great things about like looking at anti-haul or looking at things we're not going to pick up is using that as an opportunity to see what we currently have that we can kind of rediscover or enjoy instead. And it just kind of helps when we're getting that pull to want to just spend. We can kind of reel it in and go, but wait, I have this and I love this and I can use this. So I love hearing about what you guys are currently not picking up as well. I love it when other people make VRs to these anti-hauls. So if you feel like doing that, go for it, or making a post on Instagram about stuff you're not going to buy. Just remember, as always, to be kind to our creators, because we love them and we want them to keep making us beautiful tarot and oracle decks, and we want them to know that we love them, even if we end up not resonating with something they put out there. So thank you so much, you guys, for hanging out, and I will see you all in the next one. Bye!